every skater has a different personality. There's no rules. There's no call time. There's no certainty on if it's going to be first try or 100 tries. So you have to just constantly be ready.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Rough Cut Club. I'm your host, Joey Nicotra, here in our new studio with Shane, my freaking man, Right Zammer. How are you today, dude?
I'm great. I love that middle name that you gave me. My freaking man.
Yeah, MFM. Dog,
yeah,
my freaking man.
You got to introduce Leo that's down here holding our beverages.
Dude, Leo is just like our fancy, what do you call him? He's not a waiter, but he's...
yeah, it's a side table. He's a waiter.
This is my side chick right here.
Side waiter.
Leo's the leopard that's holding our drinks right now. And I honestly, I had, when we were building out this studio, I was like, I found this online and I was like, I have to have it. Shane, can I buy this? Yes.
That's one of my favorite things in the studio.
I know, honestly, it's amazing.
Yeah.
If you can't see it, you should definitely check it out online on YouTube. But man, dude, I am hyped for our guest today, bro. For those that have known me, like my background, even way before filmmaking, is deeply, deeply rooted in skateboarding. And I was a competitive athlete for 12 years. And, skateboarding was definitely like my segue into filmmaking. And I believe you have a background doing some skateboarding.
I'm filming in early 2000s. I was the guy on the other side of the vert ramp, filming everybody skating, BMX, rollerblades, whatever, bro. And dude, love the sport. I did a little bit of myself.
Sure.
Nothing professional.
Yeah.
Got a couple of cuts and bruises. So
one of these
stayed
days,
on the other side of the camera.
One of these days, I got to put him on a skateboard and see, how much, if he can put his money where his mouth is in terms of he used to ride a skateboard. We'll see what you still got, man.
Let me just up my disability insurance first.
Well, dude, our guest today, man, is easily one of the, if not the most influential filmmaker in the skateboarding world. He has filmed... if you know anything about skateboarding, he was one of the lead filmers for Fully Flared, which is one of the most impactful skate videos and transformational skate videos to ever come out, even to this day. Worked for Trans World Magazine, DC, worked for DC for 10 years and then left to start his own company, Motion Clubhouse, which if you've been on Instagram at all, you've definitely probably heard of or are already following. And then, man, just doing like a ton of really awesome work in the action sports arena. Worked with every professional skateboarder you've ever played as a character in Tony Hawk. Like, this dude has definitely done it all, man. And just getting to connect with him on this episode and talk shop about skateboarding, how it influences like you now as a filmmaker today. And really just, some of the collaborations he's doing with Motion Clubhouse and Polar Pro ND filters. Like, he's really revolutionizing still the filmmaking landscape for filmmakers today, man.
On top of that, super awesome dude. One of my favorite guests we've had in a while, just really relatable. And what I love is that I feel like he's found this way to not be burned out over 20 years, right? He's just, and I think it's because he's surrounded himself with doing what he loves with the people he loves. In this episode, he talks about small teams, not big sets, small collaborative teams, doing multiple roles and just sharing in that collaboration and working with your friends. And even says, now with his own company, writing checks to his friends, and so it's really cool to kind of hear kind of the inner workings of his career, but then also the mentality of how to stay kind of focused and happy in a career path that has changed a lot for him over time, right?
100%.
And so, without further ado,
let's roll the tape. Chris Ray, man, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, we are super, super psyched to have you. For those who've known me and listened to any of these episodes before, I grew up a skateboarder for, 12 years and did it competitively, for most of my life. And Chris has probably filmed hundreds and hundreds of clips and video parts from athletes that I grew up admiring. And so, dude, super psyched to have you on the show, man. And thank you for just taking some time to be here today.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, man. Well,
and Chris, I didn't skateboard for 12 years professionally, but I did fall down a vert ramp once and face planted. And then I was the kid on the sidelines filming a lot. So, a lot of the stuff that you were doing, I was trying to emulate. So there's the connection there, but still skateboard world, I was just off the ramps.
What's crazy is thinking back to my skateboard years, like I dabbled a little bit as a filmer in skateboarding, but like never actually, wanted to pursue that. My goal was always to be on the other side of the skateboard or other side of the camera. And so this is, getting to talk to someone who has done this, and actually professionally done the filming side of it is super cool, because I'm actually not as connected to that as I would like to be. So excited to jump into your story, man.
Yeah, it's crazy. We, like growing up as a skateboarder first, like, and not knowing that you can do it as a job. My mind was blown when somebody was like, "Hey, we're going to pay you to do this." I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, you can do something with your friends that you love and do it every day, and somebody's going to pay you and send you around the world. And I'm still blown away by the opportunities I had.
Man, that's so cool. And, I remember growing up making like parts and stuff like that. And, it's not actually as easy as you kind of just made it sound for any filmer to just go and make it a career in skateboarding and filming skateboarding. There's a lot of people that have done it and maybe not worked with the right people, or just not had like the right handshake that like help open the doors. So like kind of take me back and walk me through that journey, for you, starting out initially filming with friends and then making that first check and then actually transitioning to turning that into a career. What did that look like for you?
So, like I said, when I first started, I didn't know you could do this for a living. I just would watch skate videos with my friends, and we'd get inspired and go skate. And the usual thing in any skateboard crew is that you film each other, you have a filmer, you make your own local videos, you make your own shop videos. I was completely obsessed with it. I mean, I would film my friends so much that they would be like, "Dude, you don't need to film this." But afterwards, they'd always be like, "Man, that looks cooler than I expected," And I skated a ton myself. We would make sponsor videos for my friends. Like, we're gonna make a full length. Like, we wanted to do what the companies were doing, just for our own town, our own crew. So yeah, doing that for many years and making shop videos, and eventually, and I can go into the story of like, I made a spot book and sent it to all the companies and basically grabbed their attention and got to film pros. But every single time it was like whether that was like making our own video or filming the next pro, it was the accomplishment of like, man, if this all ended tomorrow, like I got to do this. So it was cool to kind of see all these steps happen over years. I mean, I wouldn't say it was quickly, because I started filming, let's say I'm 40 now, and I started using a camera when I was in 6th grade.
Wow.
So that's when we started borrowing our parents' camera and started filming each other. And that even paved the way to where I am now, because I was looking back and thinking about it recently and talking to some people that, have been out of work this year or a lot of filmmakers reached out and they'll say, "Hey, like, how can I like get more work, or how can I get more experience?" And I didn't realize like how lucky as a skateboarder we were to get so many reps in, right? Because you can go out with one person in the city, they're going to try a trick 1,000 times, and you're getting practice behind the camera. Where like you have some people that just go into filmmaking and want to be a narrative movie maker, and then you got to get a set, you got to get actors, you got to get a location. Like, there's a lot more that goes into it, and you can't really practice that every single day sometimes. But growing up as a skateboarder, that's what was really lucky for myself.
Yeah, a lot of times when I've thought back to like just making skate videos, like just in general, making a skate video looks nothing like making a video, like a traditional narrative film. You know what I mean? Like, if you're lighting something, it's only like at night, and it doesn't have to be like cinematic lighting. It just needs to be bright. And traditionally, like I would say that it wasn't until, 7-ish, 8-ish max like years ago that I feel, and you can correct me on this, but I feel that like making skateboarding videos didn't become cinematic until less than a decade ago. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, growing up, it was, but it's also based around the skateboarder, right? So if you're filming at a spot that's like half sun, half shade, it doesn't matter. If the
Right.
skater's feeling it, you have to make it work.
Right.
But that also like worked to my advantage to eventually, film other things where I was like, hey, I don't need, an entire gaff crew in order to get this shot. We kind of had this DIY approach and run and gun, and we still do. Like even with the company that we're doing today, it's like we still have that skater mentality approach of we can just get things done with and without permission. And yeah, but I mean, like lighting didn't. There was no discussion of
No.
like lighting or like oh, the cameras all need to match, or the let's color correct everything so it matches.
Yeah.
And even when I eventually got my first job in skateboarding at Transworld, worked for them, like with that still wasn't a discussion. It wasn't until I went to DC when they were like, hey, we need you to film interviews and product videos, that I was like, wait, I've never done any of this. Like I've never even mic'd somebody up and done an interview. Like it was a whole completely different world.
Yeah, man. Well, I want to jump into that, but take it back to even like how did the first, relationship with Transworld even spark, and how did that collaboration happen? And then maybe where, what took place to lead you to DC from that as well?
Yeah, so I was really fortunate. I made this spot book, which nobody had really done at this time. But I was living in Reno, and teams would constantly come to town, right? And they would do demos, and I'd be like, "Hey, I have spots I can show you around," and they'd all be like, "Oh, that's cool, that's cool." So I had this idea that I'm gonna go around and take photos of every single skate spot around town, and I put it on a laptop. And I mean, this is pre-social media days. I mean, this is I'd say 2002. You can't just reach out to anybody that easily and get a hold of them. So the chocolate team came to town, and I saw Kenny Anderson, and I was like, hey, I have all these spots. And same thing as every pro says, cool, man, that sounds fantastic. We'll meet up with you later. Like, just being nice to me. And I was like, no, look at this computer. Look at all these spots I have. And he's like, that guy over there, that's Ty Evans. So I went up to Ty, and obviously, one of the best filmmakers ever in skateboarding. And I was like, hey, I have all these spots. And he just was like, give me your number right now. And I linked up with those guys. And I knew right away, I was like, oh, that's the way to really grab their attention. So I ended up sending the spot disc to every single company in the industry. And I said,
Wow.
if you're ever coming to Reno, I'll show you around. I just want to film. I wasn't asking for money. I wasn't trying to get paid. I just wanted to film pros. And gradually, people would just come to town. It'd be different groups coming in town, and they're like, "Oh, you're the guy with all the spots," and that's how I met everybody. And I would learn from the other filmers. Eventually, I met Brandon Biebel because of Ty Evans, and Biebel lived in Sacramento, and he said, "Hey, man, like, you should come film for Lakai for Fully Flared." Which, I mean, I was the biggest girl chocolate Lakai fan, and being able to go there and like work on a retainer for those guys was a dream come true, and to work under Ty Evans. He was super supportive, would constantly give me tips and advice on like how to film better and what to do, because I had no clue. I wasn't surrounded by any other filmmakers or skate filmers. I was the only one around that area, and that led to Transworld because of Ty having I guess his approval, and then being at Transworld for 4 years. And it was crazy because going to Transworld, I knew like if you got a job at Transworld, you were, now I don't want to say like set to be in the industry, but it definitely had that standard at the time of you're going to be like one of the main filmmakers.
Yeah.
So it was extremely scary because I was still working a part-time job while working for Lakai. But the second that John Holland called me and he's like, hey, we're going to hire you at Transworld, I was like, this is the scariest moment of my life, that somebody's actually handing you your dream and being like, there you go. Because you have the opportunity to mess it up. Like that's when it actually becomes scary. And, I spent a good 4 or 5 years there learning from John, learning about, editing and doing the DVD box art and how we're going to do the premiere and things like that. And it was an incredible life lesson. And then, DC came along, and I ended up going there with a bunch of friends and spent 10 years there.
Wow, dude. Wow. So two things that you mentioned there I want to touch on.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, did you have any? Okay, let me just set the context too for those that are listening that are not skateboarders.
Mm-hmm.
Fully Flared, the DVD that he mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
is probably and this is my opinion. There's no stats behind this, but is probably the most iconic skate video that's ever been made. One of the, at least in the top 10, hands down. And I think it actually changed the way that skateboarding was filmed from there on out. Like, it set a new standard for what could be possible with skate videos. Did you have any idea going into that part that it was going to be so game changing?
I knew 100%. I mean, I'd say it's definitely the top 10, and I would say it's definitely the most anticipated skate video ever made.
100%.
I mean, I was probably the most excited for that video than anybody else in the world. Like, I can claim that. You know what I mean? So to get the opportunity to work with those guys and film those guys was huge. But I was still so young and green that I didn't know, like, I knew what it meant to be involved, but I didn't know, like, how much I was necessarily going to get credit for. And I wasn't really looking for that. I wasn't concerned about that. It was more of just like, I cannot believe it. I got to film tricks in this video. If I filmed one trick, I would have been just as excited as the amount of tricks I did film. But being at the premiere in Los Angeles and seeing, and I didn't talk to Ty about this stuff. I was still just super green, lucky to be involved. And when the credits came up and it said filmed by, and it had like the main 4 or 5 guys on there, my name was on there, and I couldn't believe I didn't even know I was going to get that, even though I was on a retainer. And then you have the additional filming by, which is like, 100 people.
Yeah.
But having that filmed by and my name in there, that changed a lot of things for me.
Yeah, man, that's so awesome. Well, bro, I have spent so many hours of my life rewatching that video, dude, and it definitely changed. It changed the way that I wanted to be a skateboarder, like, forever. And so super, super impactful, the work that you did there. You mentioned that when you got, like, handed your dream job, it was like, that's when things got real for you. And that's when, you felt like that fear and that, I don't want to say anxiety, but there was a lot of, like, pressure that came from it. How did you, like, for those that are listening, there's those moments that happen on the other side of this camera, for other people when they get an opportunity, that it's like, hey, this is a game-changing opportunity. What did you do in that moment to set yourself up for success on that project that other people can take away and apply?
I think when I was given the opportunity to have my dream job, I think I just constantly looked at it in the scenario that I need to do everything I can to keep it, first of all, right? I need to prove why I'm out there, because it's like, it's funny because I was thinking back and I was like, when I was full-time skateboard filmmaker, I would say there was less than 20 people making a living off of being a skate filmmaker. Like, that's crazy with how many people are in this world, right? Like, there's more NFL quarterbacks than there are probably skate filmmakers making a good living. Yeah. So I always kind of went out there and it was just like, okay, I'm going to be obsessed with this. I made it a priority in my life. I mean, I would be at dinner with my wife and just be like, oh, just got a call. Stefan Janowski wants to film a trick. I'm going. Like, I was, I never said no to the opportunity. I constantly put it first, and that's pretty much just what I did. I was like, I want to be the main dude, and I want to show why I should be the main dude.
And it's so cool. It's inspiring, just like the work ethic and the grind that it took to do it, and it shows. You talked about not even knowing how to mic somebody up for an interview once you were transitioning into, like, telling stories, for the first time. Cause it's like when we're building a skate video, it's like there is a story there and there's, like, these B-roll, like, story components that are, like, woven in, but there's not, like, the traditional story that a lot of people are looking for when they're making videos. The majority of the industry, right? So how was the transition for you to, like, learning how to tell traditional stories through a video medium when your previous background had only been, making skate parts?
To be honest, it was really difficult, and it was something that I struggled with right away. I mean, I left the company. When I left Transworld. I left DC. There was a lot more responsibility. I was managing a films department. I was asked to do all these things that I hadn't done before, and I was kind of I was really turned off by it at first, because I was like, that's not what I do. That's not me. Like, I was so tunnel vision. I was like, I'm only film skateboarding. That's what this is about. That's why you hired me. So that was really difficult, but over time, I kind of learned how to balance it. I think that that's when other filmmakers in that department, they weren't just skate filmers, were kind of like entering my life and showing me like, hey, you don't have to do this by yourself. Like, you're with a team, and they were helping me, but also I was learning from them a ton.
Man, so awesome, dude. Man, I feel like when I think back on just like the skate videos that I grew up watching, my involvement in the industry, the action sports filmmaking side of things has changed rapidly in the last decade. Just the tech that's come out, the way that things are done now, like social media and everything. As somebody who's been inside of the action sports filming world, how have you been, how have you seen the industry evolve, and how have you been impacted since initially starting your career?
I work with like a lot of younger guys right now, and we'd always talk about it because they didn't have the experience of having these premieres and DVDs and iTunes. I mean, we were one of the first to do skating on iTunes and things like that. When I was at Transworld, one of my jobs was taking the video off of YouTube. So I would go through and try to find it to where, they would spell Sean Malto's name backwards, and then you click on that link and it would have 100,000 views like right away, and I'm like, this is crazy. Like, and I was policing that. I was getting it taken down, and I've always been like really open-minded on that kind of stuff, and I kind of saw what was evolving. So I went to Transworld and I was like, hey, look, like, this isn't making any sense. If we're making 20,000 DVDs for this video, but yet I'm clicking on this link where it's been up for a week and has 100,000 views, like, something's not right. I saw things changing, and I saw that it wasn't a fight that I was going to win if I sat there and I was like, okay, this is happening with YouTube and people aren't downloading this, and why is these clips going to social media? So I've always been very, very open, but I've also been on the side of where I've always had a salary and I was a full-time employee. So it was like I was guaranteed my check, where I could see this argument being a lot different if I was paid per clip, freelance guy in skateboarding, where my clips are getting taken and uploaded without getting paid, because that's happening a lot right now. So, I was just in this different scenario, but I've always been a fan of the evolution. And at the end of the day, it's like getting the most eyes on it. It's up to the company to figure out how they're going to monetize it and make money off that.
Yeah, man.
So good. I didn't even think about that, having to, go and find all the links on YouTube back when it was the DVD sales. I want to jump in real quick. Camera. It's really not that important, but Chris, I filmed skateboarding, like I said, from like 2001 to 2005 in Houston. I was one of those that didn't get paid, right? So, I got paid in probably Bud Light or Budweiser or whatever they give me. But I remember, I was on like camcorder Super 8, and I was so excited because I saved up and bought the Canon XL1S. Remember that big, like, because they used it in Hollywood for that one indie film that I can't remember what the film was called, some zombie film. But what camera were you rocking back in the day? And is there anything nostalgic that you miss about, like, because I assume it's some sort of tape or film, and do you miss any of those elements of shooting on that format?
Hold on. Before he answers,
You gonna guess?
I got my guess. Is it the VX?
Oh, you know the answer.
Is it the VX1000?
The VX1000, yep, with the Century Optics fisheye.
That's
it,
it,
definitely.
baby.
So the VX1000 is the most iconic camera in skateboarding, and it's still being used today, which is absolutely mind blowing.
Yeah. Wow.
And I used, obviously that camera is the best at film skateboarding, but as things evolved, the Panasonic HVX200 came out, right? And there was one point when I was at Transworld that we were kind of like using both, and we're kind of figuring it out. And when we first started filming HD, we're like, this doesn't make any sense. We've now widened the image. We're losing the height, and it's harder to film skateboarding and the spots don't look as big. So this was a huge struggle. And I remember being at it. This was a really key moment for me, is that I was filming a trick. I was in Sacramento filming a trick, and I had both cameras in my bag. And I pulled out the HD camera, and I go to film the trick, and I go, oh, I just can't make this thing look good. And I put it back in my bag. And I remember a close friend of mine was there on the session, and he goes, do you think that's the camera that everybody's going to be using in 5 years? And I was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. And he goes, then why don't you just get really good at it? And I was like, you know what? You're absolutely right. So again, like with the whole, the way the videos rolled out and what gear we were using, I've always tried to be advanced in that and tried to stay ahead of that because, some people, it's fine. Some people can still film with the VX, and I respect that, and that's their style. But I just always wanted to be, using something new. And I think that it also made me get like less bored, just like having a new camera and trying to figure out the goal. But ever since that day, it's like, okay, whatever is next, I'm going to use that.
Yeah, so sick. Man, we've had a lot of guests on the show, both, even me and Shane included, that like have a background in skateboarding that then made a transition to being filmmakers. And I just feel like, especially here in the Dallas community, there's a lot of friends that started out in skateboarding and then now they're filmmakers. Do you feel like there's any correlation there? Because I feel like, for those that had the dream of being a professional skateboarder one day and it didn't work out, there's a route to the creative arts space. Do you feel like there is a connection there, or have you seen that play out with your community?
100%. I mean, the amount of sets that I go on now and people I work with at agencies that used to skate or grew up skating and still skate is just, it's our generation, right? So it's like we're surrounded by skateboarders. And I don't think that, like, if you can film skateboarding, I think that you can do anything. But I think you don't realize that while you're doing it. I think that when you go off to be a filmmaker, in this case, and you start filming other things, you go, oh my gosh, like I didn't realize how hard filming skating was and how much work you put in to get that 3-second shot. I mean, the average skate clip is like 3 seconds long in a video part, right? So you can spend months to get that one shot. Which is absolutely crazy. And it's very inconsistent. It's not like the person's going to the same spot every time and the angle's always going to be the same. So, once I started filming stuff outside of skateboarding, I was just like, wow, this is easier. Budgets are bigger. You've got control over things. You can tell people what to do. Skateboarders are very, you can't really tell them what to do, right? And that's what I've always loved about it too, is it kind of has this like live TV aspect to it, to where you just have to kind of, every skater has a different personality. There's no rules. There's no call time. There's no certainty on if it's going to be first try or 100 tries. So you have to just constantly be ready. And that's why I've always been a fan of like, live TV type of shoots or events or football or just, anything like that. Like I think that skateboarding got me to that spot.
Yeah, man. I've told people this here, but I feel like previously being a skateboarder is my competitive advantage as a narrative filmmaker now, just because I come from a background of doing, even just being on the skateboarding side of things, like trying something literally sometimes 10,000 times until you land it once. Like, it's just a different sort of mentality that a lot of people have when they approach the commercial sector. And I feel like it's, in a lot of ways, it's given me resilience to failure that comes with being an artist that a lot of people are just not used to experiencing to the same degree as skateboarders, like when they just fail over and over and over again. And it's a mental game a lot of times more than it is a physical thing. It's like you mentally have to push yourself to a place that, you're just not used to, and you're not comfortable like jumping down your first handrail. You're not used to doing things that your body physically doesn't is afraid to do. But you're just so passionate about it that like you push those boundaries in your life. And I think that skateboarding for me is definitely that's my competitive advantage. And so, yeah, man, for those that haven't done it before, it really does push you to a different part of just your mentality. And I love it, man.
I think what Chris was saying earlier too, being the filmmaker and not having any control of the light or the subject and always trying to get the shot and include everything in the shot did teach you. It's run and gun filmmaking, like you said at the beginning. Yep. It's kind of like going back to, Cinema Story. We have a big start in like event, coverage, whether it was, a conference or sports or whatever it was. Weddings, right? Live action stuff that you can't redo. It's kind of like a trick. And so having reps in that, I feel like prepares a filmmaker to be ready for anything. Where you do have so much control and you're like, wow, this is so much easier. I can just say, do it again. Exactly. I can ask that guy to move that light. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it took me years to realize that. I couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, I've gotten so much time and hours behind the camera because of skateboarding.
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't spending time lighting stuff, and you cannot storyboard a skate video. Mm-mm. Like you are shooting it, and then you got to figure out the edit. While you're kind of there, you got to kind of imagine in your head, oh, I've got this trick, and this can go with this, and then when you get back to the computer, you're piecing it together. There's nobody saying, oh, okay, you went and got that roll up shot, and you got the stair shot, and you got the rail shot. It's like, no, you're doing what the skater wants to do.
Yeah, yep. Man. So, man, take me to present day. Like you had this super, comfortable job with DC for a decade, which is one of the most iconic shoe companies in the game. Like, you leave 2 years ago to start this little company called Motion Clubhouse. Man, talk to me about like the transition out of DC and like what's your why behind starting Motion Clubhouse, man?
It was actually a very smooth transition. It was one of those things that, when I first got my job in skateboarding, my biggest fear the whole time was I didn't want to be done before I felt like I was done or ready, right? Like I didn't want to lose my job or lose my position and then be like, I still wanted to do this. But I got to this point, and DC was very supportive of letting me do freelance, and our whole crew doing freelance the whole time we were at DC, right? So I'm off doing, car commercials, music videos, NFL stuff, like really just anything that comes my way I'm doing while still having a full-time position at DC. So they were very supportive. The point kind of came to where it was like, okay, Martin and I are getting a call 2 times a week from random jobs, and it's obviously when you're freelance, it's there's more money involved. And I was getting really excited, and it started to turn into where I was like missing these opportunities. And finally I said, you know what? I think it's just time that we go. And my wife was very supportive of it. She was looking at everything. She's like, this is like crazy. This has been 2 years straight now of just, you're getting 2 calls a week. You don't reach out to anybody. And she's like, I see how excited you are to do it. So I went to Martin, who's one of my best friends, and he worked with me at DC. And I said, hey, I'm going to go do this thing. I don't know exactly how it's going to work. I would love it if you joined me. I don't have all the answers, but I think as they come our way, we're going to figure it out. And, he didn't question at all. He's like, let's do it. He's like, I'm in. So we told DC we were out, and we were fortunate to kind of work out a good transition with them and work with them for another 6 months and, just get experience of how it is to kind of be more on that agency style side and, keep going from there. But it was pretty crazy. It was, to give up your job that you have, full insurance, company card, a good salary, like you're traveling the world, you're filming these amazing skateboarders that are your friends, it's a big part of my life. That was probably the biggest part. It wasn't like, oh, you left a company that you have a salary. It was more like this position and this job defined like who I was for the majority of my life, for doing it for over 20 years. It's like, that was me. So it was really scary to step away and be like, I'm doing this other thing. But I felt very confident and I felt very excited to figure out. I had figured out the DC stuff. Like I could walk in there and I could be like, yeah, this is what we're doing. This is how it's going to work. And we had such a good team. And I was like, it just wasn't hard, like we just did it. I wanted something to where we kind of had to figure out like, how's this going to work? And what do we do? And that's what has been exciting about Motion Clubhouse.
Man, so awesome. I feel like that, creatives, they go through, like a lot of times there's a shift that happens, right? Where you're once only focused on the creative aspect of it, and the creative aspect is what draws you to it. Like you loved filming, skateboarding, and the filming and the art side of it drew you to the sport itself. And then like as you evolve as a creative, like you start to realize that like there is this entrepreneurial component to being a creative that you have to maintain, and that you realize like if you grow in this entrepreneurial area, like more doors open for you to do the art side of things. And I'm curious, like when you were in that process, were you going through like a shift internally where you were like, man, like I'm starting to have more of a pull towards these entrepreneurial endeavors? Was it kind of like a force thing for you where you like, man, I just want to do the craft and not the business side of this thing? Talk to me about how like that shift happened when you were going through that process.
I think I've always had the mentality of like entrepreneur and business mindset. I've always loved that since I was a little kid. So I've always kind of been like that business leader in the group, and okay, this is the plan. And it goes back to making our own skate videos with our friends, right? Like I would be the one that's like, hey guys, this is what we're going to do. We're going to call the video with this. We're going to have a premiere. We're going to set this up. We're going to do it with this skate shop. Like I was always kind of like that guy piecing it together. So this transition was actually like very smooth and exciting. And even when I worked at DC, the approach that I had working for the company was that I owned it. So I treated it as if I had ownership. So this wasn't new where I was like, oh my gosh, I have all this responsibility and I have to start thinking differently. I always took that approach to anything I work with. And I still do. Even when I work with a company nowadays, it's a client of ours, I have that same approach. Like we own this. We have ownership. Like our name's attached to it. Even if it's not publicly, a Motion Clubhouse logo on it, like we treat it that way.
Yeah, man, that's so good.
That's awesome. So, as a business owner now, and an owning Motion Clubhouse, there is that business side of things that you have to manage and do, and then there's that art side. And I'm sure I imagine you have a team and teams of people to help you with that. But where do you really find, or is it both sides? What kind of roles are you doing within the company, and then like what's your favorite role of enjoyment? Because I struggle with this. I've gone from doing the art, the DP edit, all that stuff. Now, I sit behind a desk, do a lot of consult discovery and, strategy calls with clients. And every once in a while I get out on set and direct. So what's it like for you now at Motion Clubhouse? What's that kind of balance look like, and the roles that you play in the company?
So even with our crew, I mean, we're constantly switching off, whether it's like filming, editing, and we've always been like a multi-tool, right? So it's like we can direct, produce, we can film, we can edit, we can, do all that stuff, right? So there's never really, the circle that I'm surrounded in isn't really been like, hey, I'm the director and I'm in charge here, right? Like it's always just been a team mentality. But my favorite part has been really paying attention to the team and paying attention to others and seeing like what makes them perk, what gets them excited to do, right? Like, is it the documentary stuff? Is it, the fast action stuff? Is it action sports stuff? Like, what gets that person excited, and how can I get them more in that position to experience that more, right? Because this isn't about me. Like, this is about my friends and the fact that we want to do some cool stuff together. You can work for many companies, and if you work with sucky people, like that's not any fun. I want my friends to be successful and enjoy what they're doing and film stuff that they're passionate about or edit stuff they're passionate about. And that's my goal at the end of the day.
I love it. Now I have to jump on that too. What is your favorite type of thing to film? Is it still skateboarding, or like what, is it action? What's some of the things that you love to film the most?
Oh man, I like sports, so I really like football. And I'm a huge football fan where I watch like every single game. I like follow it. I mean, I pretend like I'm a GM of the league. Like I literally read about it, follow every player during football season. Like I'm watching every game. And then I ended up doing some stuff for NFL, but that was one thing I stepped back because I was like, I kind of want to like just enjoy it as a fan, right? But I still do like enjoy, anything like football related, health related, like obviously with, we work with Andrew Huberman and Andy Galpin in their podcast right now. So anything in the health space is like really opened my eyes. And obviously, you know, being at the age I am now, it's like super important. We got to take care of our bodies. So I really enjoyed that. Any kind of fitness stuff. It's, you know, it's really just anything and everything.
Man, I'm going to come back to the Huberman stuff a little later on, but man, I'm curious because like Motion Clubhouse, like they didn't just go to only film skateboarding things and whatnot. They're like, you guys cover a wide variety now of different industries and whatnot. How do you feel like your background as a skateboarding filmer for all of those years has impacted and influenced the way that you tell stories outside of that industry today?
I think it's been huge just because we're able to do stuff with such a small team. You know, there's a lot of people that will reach out to us, and it's like, we can't believe that you guys have people on your team that can share the roles of producing, directing, filming, editing, right? So where I feel like it might take 4 or 5 of us on our team might be 15 people on another crew. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? It's just that we prefer to kind of have that like smaller, you know, like I don't know if I want to be on set with hundreds of people. You know, I've done that. I've been there. And it's a little bit slow paced for my liking, but that's just my personal preference. That's what I noticed, that I'm like, man, I really just feel like I'm kicking the rocks, just standing around, kind of like waiting, you know? So I always struggled with like those narrative type projects where it's like, okay, you're going to walk through this door and then you're going to go through this hall. And then it's like, but we got to set up all the lighting and we got to decorate everything. And I'm always like, I always appreciate the results and I love watching it. And it's just, I get a little anxious waiting.
Yeah, man. Filming skateboarding is definitely fast paced compared to
the hurry up and wait narrative world.
Yeah.
And
that's kind of why, like with filming the football stuff, right? It's like, you can't go up to a player, or you don't go up to like a fitness person or something and be like, hey, can you jump up and down like you just did, and like, you know, kind of like tap your helmet or something, you know? It's like, you have to just be filming and be like, I hope I capture this.
Yeah, man. There's a rush to doing that for sure. Man, you talked about working with Andrew Huberman and then and doing a partnership with him. How did that come about? What are you guys doing together, and how did that relationship get kicked off?
So one of my really close friends, Mike Blayback, who was at DC Shoes for 20 years, he connected Andrew because he wanted to get some, you know, video content done. So I helped him with a couple little small things, and then eventually I ended up doing like a live event in Seattle. He's doing these live events traveling, and Martin and I went up and filmed with him. We got along with the crew very well. And I remember we were leaving the second stop in Portland, and he's like, dude, come work for me. And I was like, dude, we're like just about to quit our jobs. We're not trying to leave where we were for 10 years to go work full time for somebody else. And he's like, well, then just work with me. And Andrew's been amazing, man. He's like, so he grew up skateboarding. So like there's a whole connection there. Like, he's a skater. He thinks like a skater. And it's been rad to be with that crew. Like, the crew that we have there, it's like 5 or 6 of us, and we just handle it. You know,
yeah, man.
It doesn't require a ton of people, and anything video related, basically with Andrew, we help with.
Man, that's so huge. Like, Andrew's doing some of the biggest stuff in the industry right now, especially in like the podcasting sector, and like you said, in the health, like just educating people. And so that's amazing. How do you feel like, just personally, you've been impacted by being like, you know, a fly on the wall, like around somebody who is, you know, moving the way he is and like educating people on literally like life-saving things?
It's huge. It's a good feeling. You know what I mean? I've always filmed, you know, like whether it's like the shoe commercial or a music video or a car commercial, but to be a part of something that is actually helping people's lives, like there's something special, you know, there's a special way that you feel at the end of the day when that's happening. And getting to know Andrew so well and seeing how much he like truly cares for other people, how much he cares for his friends, like why he's doing this, that's probably the most exciting part, is that he truly does want to help everybody.
Yeah, man. So awesome. Well, you did a collaboration with Polar Pro and kicked off a series of 4x5.65 ND filters, and now you got the Recon filter as well, man. Talk to me about how that partnership came about with Polar Pro and what you guys are doing together.
So we were good friends with Polar Pro. We had done some we became good friends with Polar Pro. They had hit us up to do a shoot with them for actually it was for the Recon product, which that's actually Peter McKinnon's product, but we were I don't want to say like we were like the face of it, but we kind of like helped launch that product. And working with them, we are just like, man, I wish you guys could make 4x5 filters. And they're like, nah, we don't know. They had their own kind of system that was like, close to 4x5s, but it wasn't quite 4x5s. And we're like, no, we really want 4x5s. So after bugging those guys for a while, they finally were like, okay, shut up, we'll make the 4x5s. So they made the 4x5s, and then they were like, you guys want to just make it Motion Clubhouse? And I was like, dude, that would be crazy. So we ended up making them, and they've done a whole line, and it's been really cool to see people using them and get tagged in videos and photos of seeing them on set and stuff. And we went through a ton of testing with them too. Like we were lucky. Polar Pro is like they're very, concerned about like the quality and all that kind of stuff with their products. So they didn't short anything. They were like, let's test this out for a few months, make sure that everything's good. And we tested it with them, and we're super happy with them.
Yeah, man. I haven't had a chance to use the 4x565 filters from them, but I will say that every single Polar Pro filtration product that I have ever purchased has hands down been my favorite like filtration system to work with. I've used like the Peter McKinnon VND that they came out with. All the stuff that they've done for like their drones in the past have been super, super sick, and they flare like super tight. Like they're very colorful and like how they flare. And so like I'm a huge fan and would love to get my hands on the 4x565 set. And so
we gotta get a set out to you guys. We actually also we made them so that the filters, they work in any matte box system, so you don't have to be like Polar Pro matte box. It's all 4x5s. But the really cool thing that we came up with was you putting a frame around them. So like every time I had a 4x5, it would just be like pure glass.
Yes,
super
bro.
Annoying. So there's this frame, and you can literally lay it on a table. You can stack them, you can do whatever, and they're not going to scratch. But that will fit. It's all size, so it will fit in any 4x5 tray.
Dude, that's so brilliant, because every time I use them, it's like you're getting fingerprints on them, and then you got to put a microfiber to them, and you're like, I shouldn't put a microfiber to them, but
I AC'd for a while, and I was like, why are these things built like this?
No,
There's
seriously.
no way to pull this out of the case and put it into a matte box.
Yeah.
So a little bit of rubber.
I was more like, why didn't we think of this earlier? How is this not being done?
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, man, dude, that's awesome, man. Well, congrats to you on that, bro. Man, there's something to be said about like just looking back at your career so far and going like starting out as like the skateboarding filmer that made it to like work for the awesome company that is doing the now their own production company, and then doing collaborations. Like you can zoom out and see like the trajectory of your career long term, but like when you're in the middle of that at the very early stages, you can't see like you didn't even know Motion Clubhouse was coming, you didn't know any all of this stuff. And I feel like so often as creatives we can get caught up in the process, if you will, where like it's kind of a cliche thing to say, where it's like, oh, you got to fall in love with the process. But at times when you're not on the other side of that mountain, yet it is a difficult thing to do. What have you learned about just falling in love with the process of continuing on in your career? Like, looking back now with hindsight being 2020, what have you learned about falling in love with the process that other listeners, who are still coming up can take away from that?
The biggest thing I learned is easily just look at every single thing as an opportunity, no matter what the position is, no matter what your role is, right? So whether you get called to go, film BTS, or you're just going to be a PA, or you're going to direct something, like really do that the best you can and take advantage of that, because it's just, it's tough, man. Like people get stuck thinking like, I'm going to do this one thing and I'm not going to team up with these people because I want the credit. And it's like, be collaborative with other people. Like it's huge. Like I don't think you have to do everything by yourself. I think if you can find a good team, you can find a good crew, you can find a good partner, like that's way more valuable. You shouldn't do everything yourself. You're just out there killing yourself and just getting tired. You know, you don't want to do that. So, you know, I'm more creative because I'm surrounded by creative people that I respect. You know, every single day I'm constantly being admired by those people and inspired, and that's helped me a ton.
Dude, I love that so much, man. Well, bro, we want to be respectful of your time. We got 3 questions we like to ask each guest before we wrap them out. My first question for you is, if you could go back in time, what is one thing that you would do differently in your filmmaking career?
Ooh, that's a tough question. I, you know what? I don't know if I would have done necessarily anything different. I didn't go to film school. I was just obsessed with it. So anything that I ever wanted to learn about filmmaking, I just figured it out, right? But really, if I could go back, man, that's a tough one. Honestly, everything that I've done or experienced, good and bad, has really paved and made me who I am today. So I don't know if I would change anything. I think just keeping more of an open mind, maybe in those early days of like when I was like, no, I only film skateboarding, like kind of look like taking the like the scope and looking at it, being like, oh, there's other things that exist, there's other things around me, and paying attention to that. But eventually that ended up happening.
Yeah,
That's
man.
great.
That's awesome, man. Got to take I mean, even for me when I first started, I was pretty tunnel vision on the thing that I was setting out to do, and not looking at like every opportunity that was out there. And I think at the early stages, like and even now, like there's so much value to, you know, analyzing each opportunity that comes across your desk without, you know, already having a predisposition to it. So I dig it, man.
Yeah, I had one time that I got hit up to shoot. I want to say it was a music video or like some sort of car thing, and the client was like, "Hey, we have $500." And I remember I got off the phone and I was like talking to my friend. I'm like, "Oh man, they want me to do all this stuff and it's $500 for the day, and like that doesn't seem worth it." And he looked at me and he goes, What are you doing tomorrow?" And I was like, "Nothing." He goes, "Sounds like $500 is better than zero." And I ended up taking that shoot because he said that. And I met amazing people that I ended up working with much longer after that and making much more than $500 a day from getting that experience and showing people like, hey, I work hard. Like, not everybody is going to know who you are. You know what I mean? So keep the mentality of thinking like you got to prove yourself all the time. And just because you've done something cool in the past doesn't mean that people owe you, you know? So it's like, just keep proving yourself and just keep meeting new people.
Man, yeah. Some of the best opportunities that I have ever gotten have been on either free or very low paid projects that have, you know, I've shaken the hand of somebody who has then unlocked a door for me to actually have a real opportunity down the road. And so like knowing, you know, like especially when you're trying to build your books in the very beginning, man, like there's so much value to just being on set as often as possible rather than looking at the dollar amount that you're going to get for each time you do a project. So
totally.
Man, what is one piece of advice that you can give to filmmakers trying to grow in their craft or their business?
Don't wait. Just go out there and create stuff. You know, whether you got to make your own commercial, make your own product, if you're a fan of a brand, go out and do a spec piece for them. You know, you actually don't need that much money to do stuff like that. And a lot of times you don't need any money. You need like lunch money and some friends that share the same passion. Surround yourself with people that are passionate just like you. I have friends that I can call right now and I say, hey, I have this idea, I want to do this. And they say I'm in before I can even tell them what the topic is, right? So it's like I surround myself with those kind of people. They get inspired. They want to collaborate. And it's like, just do it. Like, you're not going to, there's so many times that you can call up a company or you can tell people like, I have this idea and it would be this, and they're like, cool. But sometimes people visually need to see it. Sometimes companies need to see it. If you really want to work with a brand, make a bunch of stuff that grabs their attention and they're going to go, these people are already doing it. Like, we should work with them. You know, like, kind of earn that from them if you're really passionate about it. Because if you're passionate about it, it doesn't matter. Like, you love doing it, you're going to do it.
Man, such good advice.
So true. We to this day still do spec shoots, and we love it, man. And that's the most fun I have on set now is because we get to own the full creative. Everybody collaborates. Everybody has a part, and there's no client telling you, you know, which way to do it, and you get to, usually you're doing something new, right, that you haven't done before. So there's that new element of this is something that's exciting. Yeah.
Speaking of that too, is that I'll get like, you know, young people to be like, man, the client wants to do this and do this and do this, and I'm like, yeah, welcome to getting paid, because usually if you're getting paid, usually you're doing what they want you to do,
right?
And you have to like work well with that, because there's going to be moments where you go, you know, I have some friends that really struggle with that, and I tell them, I go, you know what you need to do? You need to go out and just do your own project. You need to fulfill that creative need with your own project on the side. You should absolutely still work for this client and give them 100%, but fulfill that whole need of like of what you want to do on your own. That will help make you feel better.
Yeah, so good, man. My last question for you, bro. Who is one filmmaker who has inspired you or your work?
I can't pick just one. That's a really tough one. I mean, dude, at the top there's like Ty Evans, who I wouldn't even be where I'm at without his, you know, his support and teaching and just always having my back. You know, it's like, and all my friends that are around me are just incredibly, they inspire me every single day. You know, I see how hard they work, how excited they are, how much trust they have in each other. Like that's the best part, is seeing, you know, now that we run a company and we can write checks to our friends, that is the most exciting part of having our own business.
Man, I love that, dude. So awesome. Well, bro, dude, thank you so much for coming by the studio today, man. This has been awesome. You know, like I said, I've grown up a fan, just been in skateboarding culture longer than I've been a filmmaker. And so, you know that you have greatly impacted, you know, my childhood and my teenage years, just watching stuff that you've created, and you've been a part of my journey. So we're honored to have you do an episode with us today and share your wisdom with us.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. You guys are awesome.
Thanks, man. Yeah, hey, for those that want to get connected with you, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
You can find me on all the social media outlets, at Chris Ray Films, at Motion Clubhouse, and that's probably the best way.
Awesome, man. Hey, last question for you, bro. What's next, man? What's upcoming? What's some of the goals that you're working towards?
Honestly, it's just day by day. It's day by day. Well, one thing we always did is that we never, when Martin and I left, we did do this whole plan of going like, okay, we're only gonna film because editing takes so much time. We're getting hit for all these shoots, and quickly it was like editing actually took priority over filming. It kind of like flip-flop, but we've always been very like, let's just see what happens. And I feel like with how quick our business is going, I feel like every month it's completely shifted and changed in the positive direction of, but it's like, wow, look at, like last month we were thinking it was this. So keeping an open mind for what's next, for, you know, what opportunity comes our way, and just hopefully just keep working on stuff with my friends and stuff that we're happy about.
Man, it's so awesome, dude. Well, hey, thank you again for coming by the studio. Appreciate everybody listening. We'll see you guys next time on the Rough Cut Club.